What is going on, everybody? This is the Clean Hits Hockey Podcast. This is like episode 24 or 25, I think, and we're going live. So we're going to let some people kind of shuffle in. I am your host, Brad. We got Corey from Clean Hits here as well. Corey, how you doing? It's been a minute since I've actually been on the show. You guys had some fun while I was gone, but the trivia show was awesome. If you have not caught that, please check that out. Our lucky contestant won some free tickets to go to the Carolina Utah Hockey Club game tonight, which we'll be breaking down in this episode. We had, of course, the celebrity Utah Hockey Club celebrity SLC Puck on the show, on the trivia show. We had Brogan Houston from the Deseret News to participate in the trivia show. And, of course, that fantastic game show host, Skeet Heatley, who I don't know how you guys managed to get a poll like that, but he was fantastic as usual.
Yeah. So Benji is headed to the game tonight against Carolina. Fortunate of some, let's call them tabulation errors by our blind zebra, because I think I really probably came in second place. But hey, Benji's headed to the game. He'll have a good time. And it's more fun when you're going up against an opponent who's, I don't know if Carolina is Stanley Cup contender, but they're always they're a hard out, right? So lots of good talent. Martin HS has taken off this year, and they're a team that they play with a ton of energy. They always get like all kinds of shots. They get like probably 40 shots a game minimum. So Utah is going to be in one tonight, but it's going to be competitive for sure.
Yeah, more on the Carolina game in a little bit. Right now, they are leading the entire league for most shots for per game played at 34 average per game, which is pretty insane. I'm sure the shot attempts are, 3 times that too. So whoever's in net, I don't know if we have a confirmation yet, is going to be in one for sure. But again, we'll break that down in a little bit too.
Yeah, Vejmelka is going for Utah, and let's have a look who's going for Carolina. Yeah, they're always that team. I mean, people like thinking, no, Carolina doesn't really have a goalie to win the Stanley Cup, but I think they have the least amount of goals allowed in the whole league. So, or they did at some point very recently
as well, too. Yeah,
not confirmed yet for starter for Carolina, but I don't know if Freddie Anderson's still out, but
27
solid
allowed. Yeah,
solid. Yeah, especially when they have
side. Utah is 8th for most goals allowed. So
yeah,
Tale of two teams.
Yeah, and I mean, despite all the goals allowed this season, that doesn't take away from, I think, the MVP performance of Sergachev, Mikhail Sergachev, so far this season through 6 weeks so far. I think, easily the team's best player, and I don't think there's a gigantic gap between him and the second best player, which is probably Clayton Keller. But
agreed.
It's hard not to just drag out of my vocabulary how dominant Mikhail Sergachev has been this year, almost getting better every single game, and looking like the number one defenseman he thought he could be all those years in Tampa, and he was just trapped on that left-hand side behind Victor Hedman.
Yeah, and let's get right into it. With Sergachev, it's been impressive. I mean, this is a workhorse right now. I would need to pull up NHL.com real quick, but I'm pretty sure he's got to be near the top for most time on ice per game. I know Periaco from St. Louis is starting to kind of climb that ladder, and it's a similar situation where they are without some key defensemen, just like Utah is. So he's getting those extra minutes, but I don't think their injuries are going to be quite as long-term. And, bringing up Hedman, the Sergachev being the understudy to him for so many years in Tampa, there's a little bit of it to his game. I don't think he quite has kind of that floating refrigerator across the ice kind of skating ability that Hedman has. I don't think he quite has that just pure dominance that Hedman has. But as far as two-way play, he's been fantastic. I believe, he has 8 points in 10 games right now?
Yeah.
Not 10 games, 13 games?
10 and 15, something like that.
10, 15,
I mean, last I looked, he was on pace for, I think it was about 55 points, which, I mean, that's not going to lead the league in terms of points by defensemen, but if you look back at this team's history, that those were some of the best seasons ever by Keith Yandel and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And there's still more to come from Sergachev. And as much as he's playing, he's actually going to become a better player as soon as some of these defensemen come back, because he's not going to be so drained for minutes when he's pushing, 28 minutes a game now. If he can get that down to probably mid-20s, 24-ish minutes a night, can conserve the energy a little bit more, and there's going to be more chances to take those offensive opportunities, where right now really carrying the load, as solid as the season Michael Kesselring has had. I think a big credit of that also goes to Sergachev, and not necessarily carrying Kesselring, but helping him take that next step this season.
Yeah, and it kind of has that trickle down effect when you have a top defenseman. This is something that the team has lacked for several seasons now. I think the closest thing we've had since OEL was moved was Chychrun, who played decent on the offensive end, played all right on the defensive end, but was able to eat minutes. There were games where he would throw his body in more. He's a big boy. He's kind of an imposing defenseman, but I would say his play is not quite what the stature is. But he's still a very capable defenseman to kind of take on a one-ish role. But he was given that opportunity, and it's kind of night and day from what you're seeing from Sergachev as far as how comfortable you feel when he's on the ice. The ability to transition the puck very dominantly across the ice. I know I said he wasn't necessarily a dominant defenseman, but if he's caught behind the net or retrieves a puck deep in the defensive end, I'm not worried about him getting pinned and unable to get the puck out. He can generally skate it pretty much cross the blue line, tape to tape if he wants, or make a good enough outlet pass and a smart enough play to get the puck out. And then we've seen him on the top power play, and he's excelled there. His shots on goal is kind of interesting, because at one point here, he was really flinging puck. And if you look back at his past 10 games during the Boston, Ottawa, and Colorado games, one of those games we actually won, two of which you were at, and we didn't get, we only had a single goal, but he had 6, 7, and 8 shot attempts across those 3 games. The following 3 games against the Kings, San Jose, and Calgary, he had 5, 7, and 5. There's something I've noticed with offensive defensemen is obviously that shot volume tends to lead to points. You look at someone like Quinn Hughes, who's like averaging like 9 to 10 shot attempts a game right now, and generally hitting about 3 to 4 shots on goal. Well, that turns into a lot of opportunities for other forwards. Past couple games, however, Sergachev has kind of taken a dip, and he's only had 3 and 2 shot attempts in his last 2 games, with only 1 shot on goal per game in those 2. That may be one of those factors of just kind of wearing out due to these big minutes he's playing. And again, this is kind of that push and pull with a top defenseman, is the more minutes you take on, the more responsibility you have as a top defenseman. You don't get to really focus on one side of the ice. That Kesselring, you kind of see that as being just kind of a pure offensive guy at times. And Durzi is, again, mostly a transition guy, top power play specialist at times, and a great kind of playmaker. Sergachev has to do it all, though. And I don't know. There's not much to complain about.
And I think we'll see a different side of him tonight, because I want to say he's been paired with Michael Kesselring pretty much the whole season, but tonight he's going to be paired with a newcomer in Olli Maatta, which veteran defenseman, doesn't have the offensive touch that he did way back in his Penguins days, but solid. I mean, we've seen it since he came into Salt Lake City. He's been solid defensively. He can play both sides, so that's going to be the case tonight. He'll move over to the right side. 4 Stanley Cups between the two of them, and just his ability to stay back, and he can do outlet passes as well. That could free up Sergachev to be a little bit more offensively creative. Now, I don't know if Sergachev was ever going to get to that level of like a Victor Hedman, where he's getting 60, 70 points a season, but this could be a move where if you can free up Sergachev, you can do some other things up front with the puck going up. And because, I mean, the reality is this team has just been not scoring a lot of goals. To get shut out by Nashville is just unacceptable. I mean, that whole game, aside from Nick Schmaltz had a really unfortunate bounce in the first period, but beyond that, that was just not a good game, and need a good bounce back from that tonight.
Yeah, so that was the fourth shutout the team has received all season, which is not a great stat to be looking at this early into the season as well. Two of which have come really kind of close together. The shutout against Winnipeg, which I felt like they stayed in that game for the most part, and then getting shut out by a Nashville team who was coming off a very bad road trip, and it really kind of felt like you were walking into a trap. I was hoping that the team would have a little bit more oomph and more energy and more pushback coming off that nice win against St. Louis, but unfortunately, we didn't really see it. And then, really quickly, Sergachev is leading, or I'm third in time on ice for defensemen. He is behind only Seth Jones and Zach Werenski. Kind of interesting to think that these three defensemen are playing on maybe not the top teams in the league, but Roman Yossi and Noah Dobson and John Carlson are the next three, and Brock Faber next four right below him. So,
And I think Sergachev isn't even that far off of Jones and Orensky. I think it's just a couple of seconds, really. So you can make the argument that he's effectively number one in the whole league.
yep, agreed. And then he is in the top, tied for 18th best in points by defensemen with Erik Karlsson at 10 points. And then Cale Makar is leading all defensemen with 24, with Josh Morrissey right behind him, and a surprise third in Neo Pionk.
Okay.
For Winnipeg. Kind of shows how good that offense is right now.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, not only has Mikhail Sergachev been the MVP of this team, but he's really holding the whole defensive core together with the absence of Sean Dursey, with the absence of John Marino. Ian Cole's been pretty solid. There's been some other veteran players like Yusuf Alimak who have not lived up to how they played the past two seasons. Ole Mata's come in and looked really good. Maverick Lamoureux, still only 20 years old, has looked really solid, still holding down between 16 and 20 minutes a night. And again, I've said it in past episodes, until either a new face comes in or there's a reason to send him down, he's going to keep playing on this team. And he's looked pretty solid. And yeah, so Sergachev is really holding this whole thing together.
Yeah, I would have to say so. My camera just went out, so let me just get that going again. And that is the wrong one. 1 second. We'll just have the invisible voice for a minute here. I think when we're talking about the defensive core as a whole and just what Sergachev has done, though, is that let's not forget how young several of the players are on this roster, especially Mav Lamb. Valimaki is not necessarily the oldest defenseman, especially in games played in the NHL, even though he is the most tenured defenseman on the team. So it makes it all the more impressive of what Sergachev's been able to do with just kind of how banged up everything is. But let's shift our focus to another defenseman and go into Mav Lamb and your opinion on his first handful of NHL games. There we go.
As long as he's been up, my thinking has just been take it day by day. And until there's a reason to send him down, that's when you send him down. And right now there's not a reason to send him down. He's still been solid every single game, learning along the way. But at the same time, there's no one else to bring up in Tucson. So this is his opportunity, especially on the right-hand side. So unless Bill Armstrong is planning on bringing in another defenseman, this is going to be his spot for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And a couple things that we've already seen a little bit from him already, that can of the shot. We had that awesome first goal a couple weeks ago now. And the physicality. So St. Louis, he takes a game misconduct, maybe a little questionable. Maybe it was a little bit of a big man penalty, being a larger person on the ice like that. Your limbs can kind of flail around a little bit, and maybe a little bit tougher to see exactly what those motions were that the player took. But Maverick Lamoureux was a violent player back in his JHL days, and kind of seeing him go for a big hit like that. And granted, I thought he was trying to adjust and get out of the way a little bit, but collision. Yep. But I think we are seeing this kind of all around kind of imposing player that is right now a draft, but could eventually kind of just be a absolute pillar in the back end. I'm excited to see what's to come with him. I'm excited to see him grow his game. I think he has a very strong stick. I think some of the things that he can improve on the most is some facets to his skating and his mobility. Obviously, being so tall and large, it takes a little bit longer for him to maybe pivot around, kind of
It's still
change
growing.
angles to his stride. Yes, exactly. And be able to
Like a
make kind of quick
big awkward
adjustments.
giraffe.
Yep, exactly. And man, once that kind of fills in and he's got lower body strength to kind of be able to jolt the rest of the body around quicker, he can make those decisions a little bit quicker because his body's moving as quick as his mind is. This is a very exciting prospect, and it's been great to see him be so engaged and kind of come in and take this position and not let go. I mean, we've seen Kolachonok for several years now get opportunities and not be able to hang on to it.
Mm-hmm. And we saw another player do it with this franchise a couple years ago too. Was JJ Moser? He started the year in Tucson in his rookie year, but he wasn't down there too long, and injuries forced him up, and he never went back. And it could be the same case here, where in an ideal world, John Marino is playing, Sean Dursey is playing, and Maverick Lamoureux is becoming the number one defenseman in Tucson, playing in all situations, playing all kinds of minutes, power play, penalty kill, getting all kinds of points, really rounding out the offensive side of his game. But if that's not an option, and it's not right now with the injuries, the next best bet is he's got to come up and succeed. I mean, if he was playing poorly, then okay, we can send him down and he can go back down and learn and dominate and all those sorts of things. But and building off a comment here from Clean Hits Trent in our chat, the other benefit of Maverick Lamoureux really stepping into the lineup this year and playing very well is it helps next year when Dmitry Simashev is likely to join the team as well, where at that point, if you're Andre Tourné, you really don't want to have two rookie defensemen on your blue line, 2 out of the 6. So if you can introduce one this year in Lamoureux and you can bring in another next year in Simashev, it really helps balance things out. The blue line's not too young. The blue line's not too inexperienced. So that's just one more benefit of Lamoureux playing up in the NHL this season.
Yep. Definitely agree. And that was one of my concerns, with the hot start this team had. I actually kind of was in my head thinking this may be that year they sneak into the playoffs or at least be fighting for a wild card spot all season long. And then next year they may actually take a step back because they are introducing so many kids into this roster, potentially are. I mean, we're talking about Daniil Boot, Simashev, Mav Lamb, had he not made the team this year and gotten some of that experience. We don't know where Tej is going to fit because certainly right now, all signs are pointing to he could be NHL ready next season, and there's not much for him to learn in the Canadian juniors anymore. Before we move on to some of the frustrations and why the sky is not exactly falling for the Utah Hockey Club, yet, I do want to just kind of give a plug for cleanhitshockey.com. Again, this is going to be where you can find all of our writing. Clean Hits Trent is in the midst of breaking down all of our prospects league by league. I believe the NCAA one is coming out very soon, so keep your eyes out on that. Great place to learn more about all the different players on the team as well. We did just drop a piece on Olli Maatta last week. So again, if you want to kind of stay up to date on all the new players, all the roster players, learn more about them, you can go to cleanhitshockey.com, find all of our written content. We're going to be doing a ton of pieces on prospects so you can learn more about them. I think one of the topics which we'll be bringing up on the show is going to be covered very soon here, which will be the special teams, breaking down what's going right and unfortunately what is going wrong. But again, you can find all that content there. Lots of great ways to just be more excited about the team, get more details about the team, more information about them. And of course, we have fun pieces like trade proposals and all that wacky stuff to, eat some time in between those long 3 to 4 game or day stretches without a Utah Hockey Club game. So the bad, we talked about the good from this past week or so. I think we got to bring up some of the bad.
Yeah, and there's a handful of players you can really highlight in that category who just aren't meeting the expectations of what you're thinking they're going to be able to provide, and they just haven't been able to do it this far. And I think top of that list for me is Lawson Krause. You look at our forward group, and I would probably take, based on how players have performed against expectations, I would probably take 8 or 9 forwards ahead of Lawson Krause, which is just crazy. It's unacceptable for a player who's the associate captain, who is, one of the higher paid forwards, who has been, a regular 20 goal scorer the last few seasons and has his sights set on becoming a 30 goal scorer, has been a physical presence in the past seasons. Even that's dropping off. It's by quite a big margin than past years. 3 goals on the year, but only one is kind of worth of, they all count the same, but the one was in the Colorado game at the end when they were already down 4-0.
A garbage
the
time
one
goal.
Yeah, exactly. One was the last goal in the opener against Chicago when even Peter Mrazek was pretty much done, barely even moved. And then the other goal was one worth counting. Obviously, it was the first goal against the Islanders, and that was a game they ended up winning. But
Yes.
For a player to be, basically a fifth of the season is done, and he's got 3 goals, and I think he has 2-3 assists, something like that. Not a whole lot of production across the board in any event, and not only a lot of lack of production, but just lack of visibility. He's not throwing hits. He's not providing on the score sheet, and a lot more is needed from Lawson Krause. And it's especially a disappointing performance by somebody who was in the conversation to be the captain of this team. And when they're playing like that on a almost daily basis, but game to game, it's just very disappointing. And he's probably the top of the list of the players who need to be a lot better in order for this team to be a lot better.
Yeah, I would have to agree. There are definitely still some big positives to his game. I think he is still one of our best penalty killers. I will put that out there. Watching him on the PK is kind of a thing of beauty. He has a very active stick. He knows how to really use his reach with it and his size to kind of block up lanes. But again, the physicality isn't quite there. He only has 31 hits so far this season. And, those stats can be a little padded by your home scorekeeper, especially as a brand new team in the league. But I do think there may be a component, and I may be playing a little devil's advocate here, of he hasn't been able to kind of be on that line with Matias Maccelli as often as he has been the past 2 seasons in Bukestad. And that line had a ton of chemistry. I'm not going to blame his play on his line mates, though, as this is a veteran on the team who should be able to kind of play with anybody at this point. But it's kind of the inverse of Sergachev. Sergachev is on a brand new team. He was supposed to have several different people as defense partners, whether that was Jersey, who he is kind of playing with in the preseason, or John Marino, who hasn't played a game with the team yet. And he's making it work. And Krause on the other side it's just not the type of player he's supposed to be. You kind of hear how valued a power forward is, especially like a 20 goal scorer power like Krause is across the league. And right now, I'm hoping that other scouts aren't watching, because this is not the player that you are seeing right now.
No. Yeah, he was supposed to be a power forward, and he's not one, right? Especially not this season. But he was supposed to be even on a low end, like the next Tom Wilson, and he's nowhere even close. So, he's not going to be with Maccelli tonight. He's lined up with Barrett Hayton and Alex Kerfoot. So, line's going to the blender again, with Nick Bukestad moving up to the top line in place of Hayton. So, we'll see if Lawson Krause can get back at it tonight. But yeah, probably our most disappointing player through this point in the season.
Yeah, and last November, Krause led the league in goals for the month of November. He was on a huge hot streak. Felt like he was scoring every other game. I think he was up there with Matthews. If not exceeding him, because I know he did lead the league in goals. I don't remember if he was tied with Matthews or not. But maybe the second half of November, we can finally see that push and see all of what that player can offer. We have a comment from Duncan Idaho. Is it crazy to think having a new baby can be distracting to some of these players? I know when I had new babies, I was useless at work. I do think it affects people differently. On the flip side of that, though, Brandon Montour went out on a road trip the day before he had his baby. He put up a hat trick against Montreal. Granted, this is a defenseman, went home to see the birth of the baby, flew back out across the country again, and then put up like 13 shots on goals. And the next game, I think it was against the Capitals. So every player, I guess, can be a little bit different here. You know, in the gambling community, there's kind of that new baby dad strength we all laugh about. And if somebody has a kid, we want to know, because the chances are they are scoring and putting up a ton of shots. I don't know why. It's a trend that is pretty damn consistent, but yeah, and it seemed like Krause and his wife kind of came out to Utah really early. They seemed like they were really big ambassadors for the team. It's just kind of peculiar, but you never know. Maybe it's just a slow start, and maybe it's something where it all kind of starts clicking at the same time. And I think that's a great transition for this kind of idea that the sky is not falling yet, despite kind of some of these tough losses, despite some of these shutouts, because having watched a lot of this team over the past almost 2 decades, it's kind of feels like everything is potentially going wrong. The power play is not converting. The penalty kill, which looked fantastic for the amount of penalties they took, it's starting to slow down and get worn out. The injuries have stacked up. The goaltending has not been what we are expecting it to be at the start of the season from what we saw from Ingram in past years. And maybe this is the worst string of games we see. Maybe that's the hope, but you never know.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Goaltending, average at best. Defense, 2 of the top 3 defensemen out. Krause not playing well. Nick Schmaltz, I mean, he's got all kinds of assists, no goals yet. Clayton Keller, I don't believe, has a goal in November. Beyond that, he's been second best player on the whole team. Shut out 4 times in 15 games. And despite that, only 2 points out of the playoffs, 2 points with a game in hand. They win tonight and they're right back. I mean, they're already in the mix, but they win tonight. And I mean, I don't think they're in because of a tiebreaker, but they're still in the chase. There's only 15 games done. There's 67 games to go. And it's going to be like this until the end of the year. So, you know, they're going to be in the playoffs. Some weeks they're going to fall out. I don't think they're ever going to be, you know, more than 2, 3, 4 points either way, unless they get into a sell mode or something like that in March. But, you know, it's going to be a battle all year long with those teams. Who knows where Calgary is going to go? Edmonton's kind of on the way up. Seattle's in the mix. St. Louis is in the mix, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah. And, you know, on the flip side of what we're seeing is, I mean, how good Minnesota has been. It seemed like this was a team that I didn't have the highest of expectations for, and they had a hell of a start of the season so far. And I don't know, I'm kind of waiting for that team to fall off. Carolina's on an insane streak, and I thought that team looked way worse on paper coming into this season. Now, obviously, I think the caliber between Minnesota and Carolina is quite different, but you know, Winnipeg's kind of the same position. Like, yes, they are some of the top teams in the league, but at some point they're probably going to have a little bit of a lull through the season. It's 82 games. It feels like we are so much further into the season than we are. Really, mid-November, this is really when things really kind of just start getting going. This is when you start to see team systems really come into play. This is when you can start to see the injuries pile up for other teams. So I'm not going to say that this team can't make the playoffs yet. Doesn't feel as likely as it did after that hot start, but February and March have historically been very good months for this team. I know last February was a complete disaster, but there's been times where this team will really kind of push in the later end of the long season. Again, I think you brought it up in some of the early shows here that this was the hottest start they've had in I think it was over 10 years. So I think right now it's kind of weathering the storm, getting the defensive units to be able to play together better and getting the offense going, especially on the power play. Over the last 9 games, only 2 teams have a worse goals for average per game, and that is Anaheim and Boston, who are in the bottom of the entire list. Utah is ranked 30th, averaging 2.11 goals per game. The power play, which was 15th best last season, and they were ranked 15th for goals for per game as well. Right now is at the same level, 30th overall, only converting 9.1% over those last 9 games played. This is a team that really fell off in those kind of facets, and unfortunately, they were doing all right with suppressing shots. Earlier in the season, they were kind of hovering around that 18 to 22nd. Now they've crept back up for allowing shots, and I believe they're ranked 8th overall. On year to date, they are still kind of hovering near the bottom at 21. Recently, though, over those last 9 games, that has jumped up. And no, I'm sorry. They're still at 21. It's the goals for that really jumped up to 7th now.
I mean, I think the power play, the biggest loss there is obviously Sean Durzi, right? There's still no power play quarterback. And then what's the easiest way to fix the penalty kill? Just stop taking so many penalties. I think we are, it's either top 2, top 4, something like that, and penalties taken. And it's not even like they're good penalties. There's too many men. There's obstruction penalties. There's just penalties guys are taking because they're not moving their feet and they're trying to catch up. So they're holding, they're tripping, they're hooking, and they're racking up the penalty minutes, and it's too much. And if you're going to do that against a team like Carolina, who has all kinds of speed, tonight could be ugly.
Yep. And that is something that maybe we start to see the PK and power play click a little bit more with a little bit more puck luck. We need our guy, Dylan Guenther, to really get going again. I think they need to mix up the power play a little bit. It seems like there's been a little stagnation of kind of the philosophy in it. Guenther tried to play his best Alex Ovechkin's kind of sitting in his office, but I think he needs to kind of utilize more of that playmaking ability that he has. Between Keller and him, we have 2 great shots on both sides of the ice. So why not move around and try to find just very clear lanes? And I think it's been talked about before, having somebody bigger in front of the net could be really useful. I believe Heaton has moved off the top power play unit, or he did for at least a couple of games. Maybe they're going to be trying Bukestad up there. Maybe that's just a point where Lawson Crouse needs to just stand in front of the goalie and be the big body presence that he actually is, and rather than trying to take the snipes and just be a menace, just get a little extra piss and vinegar and just be a complete menace in front of the net to really kind of get his game going again. Something's got to give a little bit on the power play, though, because this is not what we saw at the beginning of the season. And this should be, I mean, you look at the 2 units, you got Logan Cooley and Matthias Michelli on the second unit here. We have the skill for this. Even Kesselring kind of finding his offensive touch, kind of replacing Sergachev or Durzi as the top QB on the second unit. Feels like we should be a lot better here. So,
yeah, I don't know if it's puck luck or just not having the right formations. Looking at the latest from Daily Faceoff, it looks like Alex Kerfoot is the man up on the top unit now. So he's going to be with Keller, Schmaltz, Guenther, and Sergachev.
Interesting. Yeah. Maybe
nothing's been working,
show everybody
so...
what. Yeah, agreed. We know he can win a face-off. We know he can make an intelligent play. Maybe he's going to be the type of guy who can kind of keep the puck in the offensive zone longer to keep up pressure and be able to help convert a little bit more. All right. Another facet real quick before we talk about tonight's game of the idea that the sky is not falling yet is, don't forget, we have loads and loads of prospects coming. This is everything you hear from Bill Armstrong. Matt McConnell, who the play-by-play announcer was on our show earlier this summer, even mentioned that he doesn't expect Bill to be a buyer and that he doesn't think that Bill considers the rebuild to be done. So this is maybe more of what Bill Armstrong expected. Obviously, the injuries hurt a ton. So don't forget that asset building is still going to be important for this team, and seeing those steps forwards means a lot. I mean, seeing Mav Lamb come over and take some big minutes and look the part of an NHLer is great. Dylan Guenther started off red hot. I'd love to still see him hit 30 goals. That would be a huge check mark. Logan Cooley getting into the 50 to 60 point territory for the season would be a huge check mark as well. And then next season, there's going to be even more high skilled players coming onto this team. And it's, again, stacking assets over assets over assets. So, and they may have a healthy blue line for the majority of the season next year, but I don't want to already start talking about next year too much.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, I think part of this year, the reality is that it is a transition year because you're going to bring in Simishev Boot next year. TJ Ginla's probably joining the team next year. Cole Baudouin, we'll see. He might be one more year off. Josh Doan he could join this team again later at this point. Igor Sokolov, he's not the traditional prospect, but he's going to be somebody who gets a look. And there is a good player on top of good player because there's so many, and we've talked before. Like there's going to be another Sergachev style trade here at some point where you're packaging up 2, 3, 4 guys to bring in 1 or 2 because there are so many. You can't sign them all. We can't fit them all in the lineup. So, and that's a way to help address other needs as well in the future.
Yep, agreed. All right, well, let's talk about tonight's game. So Utah will be hosting the Carolina Hurricanes, who are coming off a big win against Vegas. This is one of the hottest teams in the league. This has been a very, very tough team to play against for several years now. This is a team that can take the lead and absolutely suffocate you. They're like a boa constructor. If they have a 2-1 lead, they don't care. You are not getting the puck back. You are not going to play your game anymore, and it's going to be a game of keep away. This year, however, it seems like they are loving to not only suffocate you, but completely dominate you offensively. Martin Necas has been a revelation for this team. A healthy Shevnikov playing on the top line with Aho has been unbelievable for this team, and he seems to be taking the next step. This was a blue line that I had question marks about coming into the season, having lost Brady Shea and Pesce. They have not missed a beat. The Carolina Hurricanes, to me, look like a much more complete and dangerous team than they did last season. The goaltending seems to be a little bit more stable. I think this is maybe their only weakness and a place where you can exploit. What does Utah need to do to stay in this game and potentially get a win, Corey?
I think getting the first goal of the game would be a huge confidence boost. And I mean, that's the same for any team. Don't start chasing the game, especially against this team. But for a team that's been shut out 4 times in 15 games already this year, if you can get that first one, I think that's a huge confidence boost for the team. And then you can build from there, try and get 2-0, 3-0. If you can keep Carolina to the outside, away from, if you're a basketball fan, away from like the key area of the ice, take as many shots as you want if they're coming from the outside, because if they're not genuine scoring opportunities, there's a lot less chance they're going to go in the net. So if you're taking 40 shots, but 35 of them are from not really high scoring areas, then, whatever. And I think that's part of Carolina's plan is just, pepper the opposing goalie with as many shots as you can. But there should be a large portion of those shots that are quality, or otherwise they're not going in. You're playing for rebounds, that sort of thing. So I think that's a key to the game. And like I said earlier, just getting that first goal and building from there. This is the team that has not been scoring a lot of goals recently, so getting that, I think, is a huge confidence boost.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And it's maybe one of those situations where Carolina's coming in here feeling great. Maybe they had a little fun in Vegas. Maybe they are seeing a team that just got shut out and are not going to necessarily play up to what they expect the competition to be. And if that's the case, you got to jump on that and just try to get the lead, as you said, early, hold it, and build off that. Carolina is 4th in goals for per game, averaging 4.15 right now, and are leading the league for shots for per game with 34 shots per game. It is going to be all about slowing down this engine and finding goal scoring anywhere you can on the lineup. This is one of those games that the depth scoring kicking in would be fantastic. This will be a big game for Barrett Hayton, who is going to have to play against some of the better defensive centers in the league. I don't know if he'll be kind of pinned up against Sebastian Aho, who is a fantastic 2-way center, or if he'll get to play against a fellow 2018 draft year top third 3 pick in Jesper Kokoniemi, who is centering the second line. But to me, this is where Hayton can really shine and try to help the team defensively and offensively would be fantastic. Another key aspect to me is stopping the depth. We got Jordan Martinook, ex-Coyote, who loves playing against his former teams. Jordan Stahl, who can always be a dangerous player. And again, they can get some scoring from that blue line. Another ex-Coyote, Shane Gostisbehere, started the season off very, very hot, kind of quarterbacking the top power play unit for Carolina. This is just another guy to add quick outlet passes in transitions. Slow the engine down would be my key to this game. And if you're able to do that and score early, I think they have a shot to maybe surprise some folk tonight.
Do you know who else could have been a Coyote?
Who?
The first round pick
Martin
that went
Necas?
to the Rangers could have been Martin Necas. Yes, for
Yes,
Derek
it could have.
Stepan. Oops. Yeah, I mean, obviously
Yeah.
he's not going to finish the year with 140 points or whatever he's on pace for, and the Hurricanes aren't going to finish the year with. You said they're getting 4.5 goals a game. They're not going to finish the year with 360, 70 goals. That's just not going to happen. It's just unfortunate that Utah is running into them when they're really taking off.
Yeah, agreed. But what goes up must come down. So maybe this is one of those times where the team has an off night, and we can definitely capitalize on that. So,
and they do seem to play up to the competition, right? Where they've taken
Yes.
some nights off. They took like the San Jose game, decided they weren't going to play the third period. The Nashville game decided they probably weren't going to play 55 minutes of that one. Hey, we're going to Nashville. Where it's Party City.
Dangerous walking into it.
Exactly. That was a redo of the San Jose, coming into the San Jose game, going up against a team that hadn't won in 9 games, and then going up against a dead last Nashville team on a Saturday when they're in Nashville the Friday night before. That just didn't look good. And that was right after Barry Trotz's remarks about the rebuild and everything else there, right? So that was like going into a hornet's nest. So hopefully in going up against some far stiffer competition tonight in Carolina, they're ready to go.
Yep, absolutely. And again, you string a couple wins together, which is something the team's been struggling to do lately, even though it seems like when they win, they feel like a big sigh of relief. But you string a couple wins together, especially against some of these tough teams that they got coming up, you're going to be up in the standings. Things are going to feel really good, and it'll be a lot easier to kind of forget about this little lull that we've seen the team be in. I mean, if we can get scoring up and down the lineup, which we know this team can do, it's going to start to feel a lot better as far as the prospect of kind of fighting for a wild card spot throughout the season. And kind of like Jason M said here in the comments, I feel like you should be able to build on what was positive from last season to be more consistent, not get worse. I agree. And I think make the playoffs or miss it, as long as they're doing that, they're getting more point totals than they did the previous couple of seasons. You're seeing some development from the youth. That's still all arrows pointing up, on top of having all these prospects that will be hitting this team over the course of the next couple seasons. Well, I unfortunately have to dart. Any last comments you have, Corey?
If you can beat Carolina in regulation, get those 2 points, or even in extra time, because this team likes to do that. If you can get the 2 points against Carolina, you can forget the Nashville game, right? You can make up for it. If you can beat one of the top teams after losing to the team in the basement, you can forget about the Nashville game and you go on from there.
I completely agree. So this is going to be a nice test tonight. I'm very excited about the game. Again, congratulations to Benji, who won the free tickets to the game tonight. Enjoy it. We'll have to do some more trivia and bring in Skeet Heatley again and find a way to give out some more prizes. And don't forget, we do have tons of awesome merch right now. I got my Dylan Guenther Costco card, the little OGB. You can find that at our store, which you can find in our Twitter profile on our link tree. Got tons of cool merch, Clean Hit shirts. We got the Cult of Bill Armstrong shirt along with the Dylan Guenther shirt. And of course, you can find us at cleanhitshockey.com. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Pods, and Instagram. So be sure that you are joining us, engaging with our community. We also have a fantastic Discord that just goes off during game days. Again, we have a nice link tree in our Twitter account where you can find all of our different sites. Be sure you're liking, subscribing, giving us some comments, engaging in any way you want to. We want to keep on building this community, and we are absolutely loving having all of the fan interactions and being able to chat and hang out with all of you. I am Brad. This is Corey. This was Clean Hits Hockey. The sky is not falling yet. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Adios.
We know we running it now. Watch the game change. Watch the game change.